Well, we must begin from the atmosphere in the years before the Six-Day War. Just as we were educated to look at the entire Zionist awakening from the very beginning, more than 100 years ago, we see this as being a divine guided awakening. Zionism, that the Jews, those Jews who participated in the Zionist movement, arose to change the entire position of the Jewish people, to revolt against exile, against suppression, and to strive to come back home to our homeland and to be an independent nation and continue to progress towards the realization of the words of the Torah and the words of our prophets, of our Nevi'im, and bring Am Yisrael, the Jewish nation, to its destiny, to be a blessing to the peoples of the world. This outlook, approach to the history in the last 150 years of the Jewish people was very natural for us in the 50s, yet in the late 50s, as students in Yeshivat Merkaz Arav, in the Yeshiva of Rav Kook, to all of our studies were imbued with a feeling of expectation for more acts of God to bring us closer to complete redemption.
Okay. You're continuing, you saw that Hashem would continue the work.
Yes, we were sure that we would live to see more acts of God in the redemption of Eretz Israel and the redemption of the Jewish people, and progress in every field of life, and especially in the spiritual field of faith, and more Torah studies, and more living according to the values of our Torah. And that's why when the Six-Day War came upon us in a very unexpected way, as a surprise, if we remember that a day after Yom Ha'atzmaut, after Independence Day in 1967, all of a sudden the president of Egypt, Nasser, at a news conference declared openly before all of the world, I'm going to throw the Jews into the sea. That's what he declared, and he mobilized his army, and then of course Israel, our government, mobilized our reserve forces, and we were preparing for the Six-Day War. And then, despite the fact that we were small, not only in our territory of the land, but also the population was much smaller, and the Egyptians and the Syrians, who were then allies, had many more planes in their air force than we had. And there certainly was a concern of what will happen in the war. But the God of Israel performed miracles and helped us. And the devotion of our people, Mesirut Nefesh, brought about the astounding victory in the Six-Day War, unexpected, just to mention the miracle of our Air Force destroying the Air Forces, the entire Air Force of Egypt and Syria and Jordan, whereas we attacked their airplanes as they were on the ground. In some way, it was that morning that their Air Force did not even get up into the air, and we were able to destroy them and get not only to overcome the Egyptian army in the southwest, but also because Jordan fired bombs and tank fire on Jerusalem, that we had to defend ourselves, and our army liberated all of Judea and Samaria. And then the Golan Heights were liberated too. So we found ourselves, after the Six-Day War, ruling all of Judea and Samaria and the Golan. Rabbi Levinger, my close friend, Zichrono Livracha, and myself, we were not in the yeshiva anymore then, in 1967. We served in positions, rabbinical positions. He in the Moshav Nechalim, and I was in Merkaz Shapira, teaching in yeshivot. But we instinctively had the same thoughts and minds and approach after the Six-Day War. We felt that the God of Israel, our God, opened the gates of Judea and Samaria, the heart of Israel, so that we, the Jews, can bring back Jewish life to these areas. And we, as people of faith, we understood what our God expects us to do. And the first practical step was to help the orphans of Gush Etzion, of Kfar Etzion, to come back to Kfar Etzion and bring back to life Kibbutz Kfar Etzion. The head of that group was our close friend, Rabbi Hanan Porat, and we helped that group to come back to Kfar Etzion. And then this was just 2 or 3 months after the Six-Day War, right after Sukkot in 1967, that we discussed this matter of how to plan renewing Jewish life in Judea and Samaria, to rebuild the ancient towns and cities, to rebuild the ruins of Judea and Samaria. And we decided that the first place that should be settled and rebuilt was Hebron. Hebron, which is second only in its holy value to Jerusalem, to Yerushalayim. And Hebron was the first place that a Jew settled in ancient times. Abraham Avinu came to Hebron and settled in Hebron. So we decided to start active steps to build a Jewish community in Hebron. We really began our activities in 3 fields. First, to sign up Jewish families who would be willing to come to Hebron. and settle in Hebron, and to make every effort to get homes, either to buy homes from the Arabs or to rent. And the third field of activity was to receive a permit from our government to come to Hebron. Our first goal, we were successful in signing up families, but the other two necessary goals of getting homes, either buying or renting, and getting a permit from the government, in this we did not succeed because the Arabs refused to sell us homes and refused to rent, even to give us homes to rent. And even if one or two Arabs would agree, after a day or two they would go back on their agreement because they were threatened by Arab terror. And so our friends, I have to mention that a week after the Six-Day War, a very astounding phenomenon came to be. For the first time in the history of the Jewish state, instinctively, people from the left and the right, the political left and the political right, got together and united, together with the religious, and established a movement called the Movement for the Completeness of Israel, Hatnu'ah Leman Eretz Yisrael Hashlema. Among the people were on the right, Gula Cohen and Israel Eldad, who was the commander. They were among the people of Lehi, of Cherut Israel, and Eri Jabotinsky, the son of Zev Jabotinsky. And from the left, a few of the famous writers, Natan Alterman and Moshe Shamir and others, and from the religious, the national religious, Harav Neriach Zatzal and Rabbi Levinger Zatzal and myself also joined. And our friends on the left in this movement suggested that we meet with a minister in the Israeli government, Yigal Alon, who was famous for, he was a general in the War of Liberation, and he was a member of the government, a minister under Prime Minister Levi Eshkol, and seek advice from him how to receive a permit from our government. So we went to meet him, Rabbi Levinger and myself, and we asked him, how can you advise us to receive a permit from our government? And he answered in these words, are you crazy? You want a permit to settle in Hebron? That's not the way Zionism works. If we, he said about himself and his friends, his colleagues, if we would ask for a permit, we wouldn't have all those yeshuvim that we established. Zionism demands that you create facts on the ground first, and then the permit will come later. So here, this opened the door for us, and he said he would help us. And it was during the winter of 1967 and early 1968, that thank God one of our friends brought up the suggestion of renting a hotel. There was only one hotel in Hebron, the Park Hotel, which was really not on a high level, of course. And we turned to the owner, and he agreed to allow us to rent the hotel. We signed an agreement for 7 days with an option for 30 days and with an option for a year. So then we decided that that with families who will be willing to join us, we will celebrate the Pesach holiday in Hebron. We would arrange the Seder in Hebron, and this would be the first time since 1929 that a Seder was made in Hebron. There were 4 families, we were 4 families who came to settle, to remain there, but we had more than 100 people who joined us for the Seder. And all this we did with the knowledge of Yigal Alon and with his advice. We notified the Israeli commander of Hebron that we're coming. We didn't tell him that we are coming to settle. We're coming for Pesach. But on the first day of Chol HaMoed, we had a news conference, and that's when we declared that we've come to renew Jewish life in Hebron. We called ourselves Mitnachalei Hebron, the settlers of Hebron, and this aroused excitement all over Israel, positive excitement. In general, I must say that the atmosphere in Israel, all over Israel, after the 6-Day War was an atmosphere of faith, was an atmosphere of Jews understanding the importance in this process of redemption of bringing back Jewish life to the heart of Israel, to Judea and Samaria. This is a long story, my friend. I don't think we'll be able to go into all the details.
Make shortcuts if you have to.
I'll make a shortcut.
Yes. But the key points, that's all.
The government, Israeli government, certainly was not satisfied with our act of coming and creating pacts on the ground in Hebron, in the Park Hotel. But the government had a problem. The left wanted to immediately drive us out of Hebron because we didn't have a permit. But thank God we had our ministers on the right and the religious who supported us, and really the government felt it could not, as we put it, it could not continue the barbarous acts of the Arabs who in 1929 massacred the Jews in Hebron and threw them out of Hebron. And so Mr. Begin and other ministers brought a resolution to the government, not a resolution recognizing the Jewish settlement in Hebron, but recognizing the reestablishment of a yeshiva in Hebron. Because before 1929 there was a yeshiva in Hebron whose students were massacred in 1929. And our friends in the government convinced the other ministers on the left that yeshivas easily moved, can be easily moved. And so they did not, they were not against this resolution. This resolution was brought before us. Those who were in the Park Hotel in Hebron, we were there for a month. And the resolution also included the decision to bring us from the Park Hotel to the military governor's compound in Hebron. The government said that it was for our defense and security, but also the government wanted to have control of us. And if we would be confined to part of the military governor's compound, then they could control, and they told us that they would not allow more people to join. Anyway, we had not an easy discussion among ourselves if to accept the government resolution, but a majority voted to accept it because we knew that if we put our foot in, they could not get us out, and from here on we'll continue our struggle in our publicity and our public struggle to establish a Jewish community in Hebron.
So how did they come up with the idea of Kiryat Arba, allowing you to start here?
For 2.5 years, we were in the military governor's compound. Every family, and we had 4 children, Rabbi Eliezer had 4 children at the time. Every family had 1 room for the children and the parents together. And we lived as a kibbutz. We had a chadar ochel, a dining room, and a kitchen, which was for the entire group. We had 30 families that moved into the military governor's compound, and it took a struggle of 2.5 years before the government decided to build 250 units in Hebron for the Jewish community. Yigal Alon was appointed to head a governmental committee to find the place fitting for establishing a Jewish community. And they chose this hill where Kiryat Arba is situated today. This hill, there was nothing on this hill, the Kiryat Arba is there. Not only no houses, not a blade of grass, nothing green, only rocks. This is the Judean hills bordering the Judean desert. And so we moved here, 30 families, and then we had to struggle again for every new piece of land, for every additional house that would be built.
Did you were here before Rosh Hashanah?
Yes, we were here before Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, we were here already. Rosh Hashanah of Tafshin Lamed Bet. It was really 71, I should say, September of 71. And also, we had to struggle for our rights to pray at the Marat HaMachpelah. Because when we came here, we only had rights to visit Marat HaMachpelah 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, until our government recognized we had to demonstrate I cannot tell all the details now of that struggle. Eventually, what we demanded was equal rights to the Arabs. We didn't demand to remove the Arabs. We demanded equal rights. It took a few years and demonstrations and difficulties until we achieved this goal. And eventually to continue building here. Among the struggles, let me just mention the struggle to rebuild Beit Knesset Avraham Avinu in Hebron, which was a Jewish shul that was built in more than 300 years ago. And of course, the struggle to get into Hebron. It was in 1979 that a group of our women and children, one late evening towards morning, got into Beit Hadassah, which was in ruins, and Begin was then the head of the government and demanded the right to remain there and rebuild Beit Hadassah. Of course, from the very beginning, we demanded to get Jewish houses, which were taken away and mostly destroyed in 1929. But our government would not agree to give us. But then, when our women and children are into Beit Hadassah, again, the government could not really remove them from there, but did not want to permit them to be there until an Arab terrorist attack on Jews walking from Marat HaMachpelah to Beit Hadassah. This was in 1980, the beginning of 1980. It was Lag BaOmer, Shabbat, and an Arab terrorist gang stood on the roofs of the stores across from Beit Hadassah. And as every Shabbat, since our women and children entered Beit Hadassah, they opened fire and threw grenades on the line of Jews, men and women, young boys and girls were walking to Beit Hadassah. 6 were killed, among them 4 of our students of the yeshiva, and 18 were wounded. And after that, the government allowed our men to go into Beit Hadassah.